let's talk about how to write chemical formulas for ionic compounds. So what this means is that we're going to start with a chemical name, like magnesium chloride, and learn the steps that we have to go through to take this chemical name and use it to write a chemical formula, like MgCl2. Okay? Let's start with our first example, lithium oxide. So when I'm doing these kind of problems, the first thing that I want to do is find both of these elements on the periodic table. I'm using this kind of weird version of the periodic table that I just wrote out. I left out a lot of the elements because they're not important for what we're doing here, and I thought they were kind of distracting. But don't be confused. This really is no different from the periodic table that you probably have in your book. It's just that it's missing a lot of the elements. Anyway, lithium. Want to find that? It's right here, Li. And oxide. Oxide is just another word for oxygen. It's what we call oxygen when oxygen has a charge. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later. Anyway, oxide is just another word for oxygen, and oxygen is over here. They're on opposite sides of the periodic table. And check this out too. There's this big, thick staircase that separates lithium from oxygen. What's a staircase doing? Well, if you remember, the staircase separates the metals on this side of the periodic table from the non-metals on this side of the periodic table. So lithium's a metal and oxygen's a non-metal. This is important because we have a metal and a non-metal connected together, and that means that we're dealing with an ionic compound. Ionic compounds are always metals and non-metals. So when we have metals and non-metals making an ionic compound, that means that the atoms in that compound have a charge. So I want to find out what the charge of those atoms is, and I can do that by looking at where they live, what column they live in on the periodic table. Here's what I mean. So lithium lives in this column. Everything in this column has a +1 charge. So I'm going to write this right here, Li 1+. Everything in this column has a 2+ charge, 3+ charge. You might want to write this on your own periodic table that you have for your reference. Everything here has a 3- charge, and oxygen, which lives in this column, has a 2- charge. So I'm going to write it right here. So Li 1+, O 2-.